I'd like to be in favor of doing what Mr. Lambert said, of just using the A section of that reductions and leave the other ones alone at this point. That would be my preferred.
Councilor Gowdy?
Yes.
Do you agree?
Yes.
Okay.
I do also. Sounds good.
I think you've got your consensus. Okay, let's talk about the local option sales tax fund next.
Okay, so we had budgeted $3.1 million for local option sales tax revenue, and the council shares 22%, which is $682,000. So as we mentioned last time, there are several options for that, and today we're going to address the department requests. So the fire department is requesting to reclassify an existing position to a fire marshal status, and that cost is $5,736. Secondly, they'd like to reclassify an existing position to a firefighter inspector, which is an additional cost of $2,549. And if the people that move up in those positions, that leaves a vacant firefighter position to backfill at a cost of $79,379. So is there any questions on the fire department position?
Can you state what those numbers would be for what would be proposed to be coming from loss versus the employee tax benefit levy?
Okay, out of loss, it would be $59,444. Out of the Municipal Fire and Police Retirement Fund, it'd be $14,660, and out of the Employee Benefit Fund, it'd be $13,560. The fire department is here to answer any questions. Do you have any?
Any questions or discussion?
Okay, the next position is the police department. In past years, they've cut down, and so they would like to restore their 43rd sworn police officer position. So that is at a cost of $78,081, and how that breaks out is the local option sales tax would pay for $51,258. The retirement fund is $13,337, and the employee benefit fund is $13,486.
Questions or comments for the council?
I have a question. In general, are the local option sales tax, is that an ongoing, can we expect ongoing revenue from that, or is this a one-time?
Ongoing.
Ongoing. Annually for, is there a sunset on it, or is it?
Sunset is June 30th of 2025.
Okay. Would we plan on funding these positions out of that annually? Or would they go to a line item on the?
That's our question. If you want to fund it out of the local option sales tax for fiscal year 19, and then for future.
Your Honor. While both the requests from the fire department and the police department are needed, I would prefer to see them in the future an ongoing basis to be a part of the general budget. I think that's a responsible way to go. The lost funds vary from year to year. We had a big increase in those tax dollars then. That isn't guaranteed in the future, and ongoing expenses shouldn't, I don't think, be a part of an unstable fund.
If these two positions are not funded by loss, then where would they show up at?
They're not included in the budget currently, so those personnel requests, those two personnel requests are not built into the general fund budget. So what that would do is if we added those in, it would create a larger deficit of $110,000 that we'd still need to reduce from the general fund.
I guess I don't like it to go on into the future. It says in the future And you said 2025 would come out of lost money?
Our local option sales tax is good through June 30th of 2025. The hard part would be that if we, fund these with local option sales tax for 1 year, we'll probably be talking about how much local option sales tax do you want to put into the general fund next year? Or what sort of fees and things would you look to try and offset any deficit we might have?
Because throughout this thing, there's a lot of lost money being talked about in most every item, and then your report had, you would prefer to not use any lost money for a general fund operation type.
I think that's one of the things that we should really be looking to do as an indicator of financial health of how much local option sales tax are we using to subsidize the general fund. However, these are operational needs that have been brought forward by two departments. We do have a way to fund them using essentially kind of, they're not one-time dollars because they are ongoing, which I think it's to your question, Councilmember Cahill. So they're ongoing, but the question would probably be, are you willing to support those into the future or to use local option sales tax in the general fund in the future to support those positions?
I forgot to ask if there were any emailed or written comments from the public,
No.
and I forgot to invite the public to comment as well. Should we treat this like most discussion items and put it to a vote so we give the staff some direction on this one?
Your Honor. I'd just like to make a comment. I don't want to make a motion yet. If these are positions that are needed within those two departments, I would like to see them as part of the general budget, and they be treated that way every year so that we know they're there all the time. And then we'll figure out a way to fund them through the general fund rather than using the lost funds to do it. I think if we need these positions, they should be in the general budget, and we should be funding them. Just a comment.
Are you willing to use local option sales tax dollars to transfer to the general fund to pay for these?
Not really.
Okay. So then we're backing into a deficit position. You have in the past funded our losses with the local option sales tax.
I would say at this point, cutting $110,000 out of the general fund would be a significant challenge without using any local option sales tax to balance. And so I would just recommend that we would not include these positions or position changes this year, but keep them on the radar for future budget years, or if circumstances would change throughout the fiscal year, that then we could have a conversation about it.
One question is, does this year's budget include the backfill?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so it's already in there for revenue?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a consensus that we would not fund these two positions then this year?
Your Honor, I would support funding these positions out of the lost funds at this point, and then maybe moving them to the general fund as we look at additional funding in future years.
Doing it that way certainly would put pressure on us to figure out a permanent solution. Because I know, at least with the police department, it seems like both are really essential positions, critical to have filled. And I'm yeah. We just need a permanent solution, though. That's the problem.
I agree.
I know know we don't usually do things by show of hands, but it might speed things up and I can identify whose hands were up. Those that would favor using the lost funds to fund these two positions this year, raise your hands.
Just this year.
Wait, just this year?
Just this year.
Just this year? Okay, yeah, we do that.
Looks like we have a consensus to do it just this year, and we'll figure out a way to put it in the general fund next year.
Well,
Okay.
just to be clear, they will be budgeted in the general fund, and it will be local
Yeah.
option sales tax dollars that would be transferred into the general fund to support those positions, just the salaries of those positions. The benefits would come from the employee benefits tax levies that we
Right.
utilize.
And for the record, in TV, all hands were up on that one. Okay, let's move to the number 4, cash reserve from the lost.
Yes, so this was another option that identified at the last meeting, that you could use the local option sales tax to increase our cash reserve. Our current cash management policy does state that it would be 15% of the general fund expenses. So that would be $2.2 million, and we're only at $2 million right now. So in order to get us there, we would need $158,683. And then below is just some different percentages if you wanted to fund it at that level.
Seems smart to me.
How much would we have left then in the lost funds if we did that?
One second, I'll do some math for you here, because I
Yeah.
just
Okay.
added up the others.
Say 571-ish, 571 approximately.
When we get to another item, there's going to be the local option sales tax balances at the bottom of the sheet.
Okay.
For, of the 682,000 that we've talked as being the council designated portion for fiscal year 19, with including the the personnel changes from the last item, and then fully funding at 158,000 as recommended, would still leave $413,000, or 413,000, a little bit above, in local option sales tax, council designated.
I'm okay.
The bond companies do like to see a healthy cash balance when they're doing your bond rating.
Anybody have a different opinion?
I guess at this point, I'd like to see it fluid based on the other needs that we have, that we could come back and look at that percentage as we go through our list here if need be.
Are you comfortable you have a consensus on that one? Dan?
We could certainly, we have other things to go through this meeting, and then at the next council meeting, we have the organizational requests coming. So yes, we can definitely wait, if you'd like to wait till the end of next meeting, even when you have all the information you need to make decisions.
We can certainly put this on the next agenda, after consideration of any of those outside requests.
Okay, let's go to number 5.
Okay, the next item is the long-term debt schedule. So this is the form that is requested by Department of Management and is certified to the county. It talks about our different types of debt, whether it's general obligation or revenue bonds or loans. So it's a rather busy worksheet. But if you go to the far right, the last column, that's how much we would be levying. So it would be our principal and interest payments and our bond fees. Not all the money that we pay out through principal and interest gets on this column. Some is paid out of TIF or other enterprise funds, and that's the column next to it on the left. So on this particular sheet, down at the bottom, you'll see a negative $2.4 million. We're taking our $3.1 million that we're going to get in local option sales tax and multiplying it times 78% per the election this summer. And so that will reduce our levy. So any questions on this sheet?
I have one question. Our local option sales tax is really good because of the power plant being built and with all the extra people in town spending money. Do we have any idea what it, once that's gone, where that number's gonna fall? Is, we know it won't be 3.1 million anymore. Do you have any handle on where it's gonna go?
We are using the 3.1 as it's coming back to normal. That is
Oh,
what we are using.
that is a normal number?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions or comments? Council or public? Okay, next slide.
Next item, we'd like to talk about the property tax levy. So of course, this affects taxpayers. So we did some different scenarios for you. The first scenario, we would take the $2.4 million from the 78%, like we just talked about. And then we would also take $503,470 from our existing fund balance and local option sales tax, property tax relief. So this would actually keep the tax levy at $15.28, which is the same as this fiscal year. So it would not be an increase. The second scenario, again, we'd use the $2.4 million for the 78%, and then we would use $251,735 from the beginning fund balance. So this would increase the tax levy by 29 cents. And then our last scenario, if we didn't use any fund balance local option sales tax dollars, it would increase the tax levy by 59 cents. And you can see down at the bottom of page 14 what our local option sales tax balances are. So we broke it out for you between property tax relief, council designated, and capital projects. And under council designated, you'll see the shaded area, which means that's just decisions yet to be made from this meeting and the next meeting, how we're going to spend the local option sales tax dollars.
Any questions, comments, recommendations?
Where do you want your property tax levy to be?
One of the things that I'll remind you that we talked about last year, or I should say this year, $15.28 is a tax levy that, including the current year that we're in, that'll end June 30th, we've been able to have 2 years in a row by talking about using some of those fund balances from local option sales tax and the previous designations to continue to buy that down. As we looked at, and I should say, if Diana mentioned this, I apologize. The third scenario, the $15.86, is what our tax levy would look like if we did not add anything else to it other than the 78% of local option sales tax in that current year allocation for fiscal year 19. We talked about being able to stair-step things down. I think the valuations and the debt service valuations came back in a way where things look good, as well as adding, 3% of local option sales tax it's not everything, it's not the end-all be-all, but there's 3% more in local option sales tax going to property tax relief than there was in the prior year. And I think that really helped to get the tax levy below $16. I think we were all kind of speculating that as we added on debt for the building, the new police and fire building, that we would be above $16. So there's a little bit of good news there, and I think as Diana and Brian and I talked about it, we're comfortable recommending to you that we continue to use those fund balances to buy down our tax levy. And so the question is, do you want to stay at $15.28 or be somewhere between $15.28 and $15.86 or another number completely?
Just looking at this table, can you explain the projected fund balance? That's before, it says before adjustment above. So what would the fund balance be with the scenario number 1, for example, if we did take $500,000?
So you just take the 1.2 minus the $500,000, so
Okay.
around 700,000.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure I was doing the right math there. Okay.
Is there consensus the council should follow the advice of the city administrator and finance department?
Yes. Yeah, leave it.
What would be could we, at this point, and I was kind of hesitant on the other two because of the fact that, of using some of the local option sales tax to buy down this, the debt service instead of 78%, or like 85. Is there a formula that we can go through?
The 78% is the property tax relief share that was voted on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we're using the 78%. And then the 22% is the council designated, which you could use to also buy down the property tax relief.
Mm-hmm. Reason I'm asking is because we're starting to squeeze that 682,000 down, excuse me. And it seems to me that's a very good way to buy this down, is to use some of our local option sales tax. But that would be a consensus also to do that. But now we're also squeezing down this 682,000 more. I also think that probably because of the uncertainty of the backfill, that we also may want to set some aside. I know it grows every, whatever it is, a month. Every month we get a check. But not knowing what, I guess, before I go to that, is you might want to remind everyone in that pays the local option sales tax that the more you buy here, the more this fund grows. And so, that being said, as we go through this process, you might want to spread that news that everything that people buy in the city makes this fund grow, and it makes our job easier to distribute more money, which obviously if we could get that to higher, which we can't at this point, but that would also be something that we could look at, but it's just a suggestion.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify, we're talking about a fund balance, not that 668,000. Separate. They're separate, right? Mrs. Steiner, can you just go through that again, please?
So if you look at the middle column down at the bottom, the lost council designated, at June 30th we had 563,000, and then the first part of the revenues, July through October, the council designated was still at 5%, so that's why it's only 55,000. So then in November it kicks in to where the council designated is 78%, so that's 502,000. And then we're projecting expenses out of there of 570. So at the end of this fiscal year, you'll have $552,000. That's before the new money comes in at all. So you could use some of that money to buy down the debt levy as well, if that is your desire, or you could use it for any purpose, any public purpose.
Or just to build on a question that you had asked, Councilmember Warren, that if there's, still in the lost property tax relief fund balance in the $700,000 range, that would also be available to you for that same use as well.
The only one that's restricted is the property tax relief. It has to go towards that. The council designated can be used for other purposes.
Yeah, and that's what I was relating to, is that 22%. Not all of it, of course, but...
If there aren't any other council comments, I can sense that somebody in the public would like to address this. Ms. Riscoe.
Reed Riscadall, 1412 South 5th Street. I hearken back to the E911 new commission that has been passed with the 2080 agreement. Part of the discussion there was that a very initial discussion was that I thought I would honestly be able to support all of that if the city and the county both simply backed off of where they're going to be able to be taxing at that level. It appears that now we're still at the 810 rule, and we're anticipating that particular amount still staying within your budget. So you'll be taxing at that level, and that you'll be getting rid of the expenditures that you formerly had. That simply means that $582,000 now actually truly was a deficit. I don't see where your numbers are coming from to be able to backfill all that deficit that you formerly said. You've got all the numbers right in front of you. Unfortunately, you didn't lower your expenditures commensurate with the amount that you probably should have been lowering your tax levels at. I have a real problem with that. This is the first opportunity I've had to be able to address you as a council specifically about this. I predicted it back in June. I predicted it back in November. I appeared in front of different officials periodically throughout that entire time period and asked those same things. It's been completely ignored, and now you're simply down to the fact of how we're going to balance these minor numbers of $20,000 or whatever that is. Absolutely incorrect. You are much deeper into this than you are stating, and I stand as a taxpayer that I think it's entirely inappropriate. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Any other discussion? Diana, do you have the sense that you have a consensus on that issue, or should we ask for a show of hands here?
Again, we can wait until everything has been presented at the end of the next meeting. But be warned that we do need to make a lot of decisions by the next meeting because we are running out of time to prepare the budget and set the public hearing date, and et cetera.
Could we ask a simpler question, and if the council would like to see additional fund balance from local option sales tax property relief, that category, so basically part of more of the 1.2 million than we had proposed of the 503,000 of that 1.2 million, would the council want to see any more of that applied to the tax levy at this point?
Any more than the 503?
More, yeah, but keeping, rather than talking about the council designated amount for this next fiscal year, talking about just the fund balance and funds that we have on hand already, and then leaving the council designated conversation to the next meeting.
I would, the reason these guys are looking at me because I said no, I would like to leave that alone until we make sure we get the backfill. Because
We won't know that until the end of the legislative session.
I understand that, but if we have that balance and we leave it alone, if we don't get the backfill, we aren't going to be sitting here saying, where are we going to come up for the money to cover the backfill? We already got a balance. Let's hold on to it until we make sure we get it. And then if you want to apply it to the next one, we can do it next time around.
And so what I would say is, like with anything with backfill, we would look at that council designated amount specifically versus property tax relief. That we would ask you to be allocating something from council designated, whether it's the current year allocation or whether it's some of the fund balance. So
Yeah.
I would say just looking at the property tax relief only at this point, that would be sort of the safest source that we would have at this point if you wanted to apply more, but you don't have to. I think leaving it as is gives us flexibility that when we're sitting here a year from now, we can still hopefully have a tax levy that's at $15.28, which would be a fourth year in a row to hold that tax levy at that level.
I think that's a great idea.
Consensus on that? Okay, we got it.
The next page that I supplied to you is just a scenario for a resident that would have a $100,000 house and how that would play out to them in dollars. So again, the first scenario, no increase. Second scenario, 29-cent increase, and 59-cent increase for the scenario 3, which is annually with the homestead credit, be $776 for scenario 1, $791 for scenario 2, and $806 for scenario 3. And then the commercial properties at the bottom. That's just an example for you to have. Any questions?
Questions or comments?
Our next item is our employee benefit levy. This is Fund 112. So what this pays for is FICA tax, papers, health insurance, and workers' comp. So we do levy for this, and then we transfer the money to the general fund to cover those expenses for those type of items. So the total transfer out to the employee benefit to the general fund would be $2.4 million. Any questions? And you have the budget comparison worksheet. Excuse me. You have the budget comparison worksheet, and you will notice that last year, under the property tax revenue, we only put $310,000 rather than 2.2 like we are this year, and that's because last year we bought down the employee benefit levy by $2.25 million. So that's where we used it last year rather than in the debt service. Any questions on that?
Just to build on that, why we did that, that long-term debt worksheet is part of what gets submitted to the state. So it's very clear, there was a line that spelled out what 78% of local option sales tax looked like and what that was buying off our debt service levy specifically. So when you go to look on the state's website for the city's budget, you'll be able to pull down that sheet. Whereas with buying down any of our employee benefits, that was something that you could only see internally by what was being transferred in. So we thought that was a more transparent way to show how we were using local option sales tax towards property tax relief.
Questions or comments on this one?
The next item is the police and fire retirement benefit levy, Fund 117. So our police and fire do not participate in IAPERS, rather they participate in their own retirement. So this fee is actually increasing. The employer share is going from $25.68 to $26.02. I should say it's a percentage. So 25.68 to 26.02%.
Questions or comments?
If I may, the increase you said was for the employee payment? Employer payment.
The employee stays the same.
Okay, thank you.
It's at 9.4%.
Are we comparable to other cities our size around the state?
It's set statewide.
Questions or comments?
What do we do about that?
The next one is the road use tax. So this is used for a lot of street activity. So our salaries and benefits for our employees are in our general fund. And so we use the road use tax money to reimburse that general fund for the gross amount of wages in the particular departments. So you have roads and bridges, you have sidewalks, you have street construction, engineering, snow removal, street lighting, street cleaning. So all those go back to pay for that. So you can see that transfer on page page 30 under the function 9,000, and they're transferred to general $1.2 million. Do you have any questions on the road use tax?
Hoop?
Somewhere, I don't see it in here, road use tax pays some wages of certain jobs that are done in engineering, is that correct, or?
For the engineering department, all those departments I listed are paid in the general fund, so we transfer the money from the road use tax into the general fund to pay for those gross wages. For the streets, lighting, snow removal, etc., that I named before.
Which is pretty much the entire engineering department?
A lot of the public works, right? Not the enterprise funds, but the public works department.
Could you give us an idea, maybe Justin can, of how he breaks down the percentages? Some are charged to street and alley, and some are charged to the sewer department, and some to the storm sewer. Who else do you charge to? Don't you get paid a little bit to do the work for the trails organization too? Are we billing them for some of our engineering work? So, can you give us an idea of what kind of percentages you use, or is it by project? How do you?
Well, if an employee is budgeted someplace,
Yeah.
if they're doing multiple things, then they're tracking their time. So
Okay.
when we run it through payroll, it's allocated that way.
According to where they
work.
So we go ahead and budget it into road use tax, but that person may not, all of their wages may not be subject to road use tax if they're working on a different project.
It's budgeted in the general fund. The wages are budgeted in the general fund, and then we show
Oh,
a
and then you just make
transfer from road
transfers
use tax. Yeah.
by the department that they're charged to, okay? So,
It's a transfer of actually what they work. So we're not, if we're just saying, that they're 50% there, we believe they'll be 50% there, we're not transferring that 50%. They have to do that time and report it through payroll before that's done.
okay, but on the budget, we show them 100% in,
The
okay,
general fund.
so the budget numbers, I'm trying to get an answer to his. The budget numbers show 100% of the wages, but they may not be, at the end of the year, they won't get 100% out of there. They may get just a percent of what they actually worked for that department.
We
Okay,
reimburse actual.
gotcha.
There is one salary in there, and that's just a part-time person
Okay,
in road use tax.
thank you.
Other questions, comments?
So again, at the next meeting, you will have organizations come forward and submit their proposals to you. And then we would really like to kind of wrap this up and make decisions so we can finalize the paperwork. So when we come back on the 12th, it will be done basically. And then you just need to set the public hearing.
Thank you.
Okay, what's next?
Those are all the documents that were associated with that item, so we're at adjournment, I believe.
Okay. Well, at this time, we would invite public comment as well. Seeing no one rising, we are adjourned, and the time is 12:47 p.m.
That's pretty quick.